What is up, everybody? This is our first stream of a Locked In Retro Plays. We play a game every month, and we come back and we all talk about it. Not just focusing, it's going to be mostly focused on retro games with occasional, some of the newer stuff that we just really wanted to play. Like, eventually I will get to Resident Evil 9, I'm sure. But I am one of the hosts, Devin Lockwood, and that's my main man, Dan, right there.
What is up, y'all?
It's live. Sweet. Alright. So today we're talking about Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, and then the remakes Fire Red and Leaf Green. So Dan most recently played Yellow?
Most recently I played... Actually, that I finished? Yeah, Yellow.
Okay. And I pretty much finished Leaf Green. So, and I played Pokemon Yellow most recently, probably like 2 or 3 years ago. So for me, the original games, Red, Blue, and Yellow, are obviously filled with nostalgia. They're not very friendly to go back to, however.
They have not aged as gracefully, admittedly. There's a lot of quality life improvements since then. They're very slow. Grinding is a lot more agitating in those games.
Yeah.
There's a list you can make of that, definitely.
Yep, and then the remakes of Fire Red and Leaf Green added a bunch of quality of life improvements. Added the experience meter. Well, I guess Gold and Silver added it, but in Fire Red and Leaf Green, you had the experience meter. You got the running shoes pretty early in the game.
Yeah, the Versus Seeker.
Yep, the Versus Seeker is huge, which I actually wasn't using until you pointed it out that day, and I was like, why am I not using this?
Oh, by the way, but just before I forget, it turns out you can actually rebattle trainers in Sapphire and Ruby. I just figured out.
Really?
Yeah. You don't have the Versus Seeker, but you have something called the Pokenav. It's the same tool in which you look at the map, and then there's something called Trainer's Eyes, where it's like you have trainers' contact information, and then there'll be like a bullet pin next to their name if they want to rebattle you, and it tells you what route they're on. It's a little bit more cumbersome because you have to actually find the right trainer, but still, the fact that it's there is great.
Right. You know, because obviously you're going to get more experience points from that than battling in the wild.
Yeah, and more money.
Yeah, and with, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, with there being no experience share, and when you can eventually get it through, catching enough Pokemon in your Pokedex, one of Professor Oak's aides give you the
XP share tool.
Which again only lets you do it on one Pokemon.
Yeah.
So it helps a little bit, but it's not like these newer games which basically hold your hand the whole time and you can just run through everything with one Pokemon and your other Pokemon benefit from it. Which is why when I played Leaf Green on stream, I did it via a Nuzlocke, and it was the first time that I actually went through and fully finished a Nuzlocke. Very fun. My team looked very different to how I would normally play, which was awesome. Because normally, I tell myself I'm going to diversify with my team, but it just more or less winds up with 6 of the same 10 Pokemon that I run through these games with. So getting a different feel for some of these Pokemon that I've never used and feel how good or bad they really were. I still use the same ones like Gyarados I always use, Charizard I always use, but using someone like Weeping Bell and Victory Bell, which I never really go to, because normally if I have to get a grass Pokemon, I'm going to choose something else.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's nice to get a little bit of taste of different types of Pokemon that you maybe wouldn't normally use.
That's the thing, because admittedly I've never done a Nuzlocke run, but it's that premise that, as you were just saying, sort of forces you to go outside of your typical comfort zone or habitually things that you gravitate toward. So it's like you learn new movesets and then like the different strengths and weaknesses of each Pokemon. So admittedly, Pokemon like Bellsprout never appealed to me, but as you were singing his praises before, it's like, okay, might as well try that one day.
Yeah, so that is the benefit in my eyes of a Nuzlocke, is you get a taste of different types of Pokemon, and maybe you discover one that you really love to use going forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a huge benefit for me personally.
Yeah.
Let's see.
One of these days I'll pull the trigger on that. Of just as far as Nuzlocke is concerned.
Yeah,
Right now I'm still tearing through Sapphire. I'm like probably about 60% through the game, but one of these days I'll give that a shot.
I definitely would. Um, all right, so before we continue to dive a little bit deeper, um, just give us a brief history on who we are, being that it's our first episode, and we want you guys to know type of our tastes and where we come from gaming. Dan, why don't you give a brief history of how you started gaming and maybe what was your first game, first system?
Okay, so when I've been gaming since, let's see, uh, at the risk of talking in Zoomer terms, I was either 6 or 7 years old when I brought into the gaming scene. My dad picked up an NES, an original NES,
Oh, nice.
from a garage sale with a handful of games. So that was my first major exposure. So games like the original Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Contra, Double Dragon 2, Dig Dug 2, the original Legend of Zelda gold cartridge I had,
Oof.
and Mega Man 5. So I had a good exposure to like all these major like big hitter franchises from their beginnings, and then it kind of went from there. And I was mostly a Nintendo nut growing up in the day, so I had the N64. I picked up a Super Nintendo during my teen years. I learned of the greatness of Super Metroid. Metroid being my favorite franchise of all time. I then eventually in my early, I would say around 9 or 10, I got into PC gaming with games like Diablo and Roller Coaster Tycoon, all those sort of gems back in the day. But by and large, I'm still kind of down the middle between PC and console gaming for the sake of changing it up. I was a big Game Boy nut as well. I still am. I recollected most of my legacy consoles, as you can see behind me. So that's sort of my beginnings. What about you, Devin?
So my dad and my sister shared a system. My dad had went out and bought a regular NES. Um, I didn't get to play that.
Sorry for
Uh,
your loss.
yeah, no, I was obviously very young, and with never having exposure to that, I was probably 5 or 6, um, and you know, back then with it being so new and niche, and not everyone had one, or what have you. You had to be very careful, and I was just a rambunctious little kid. I was always running around. I was always doing something. So
Mm.
my grandfather, you know, and grandmother, being that they had like 6 grandchildren that would come around regularly,
Mm.
um, we would they bought a Super Nintendo,
Very nice.
and that was my exposure. Was every weekend after either football or baseball practice on Saturday, we would go over there, and it was you know my first game I ever played was Super Mario All Stars,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, and Super Mario 3 was
Very nice.
the first game I ever played, and my love for gaming just took over from then.
Not a
Cause
bad place to start.
yeah, that game still ages well. I've played it recently. Everything about it is just fantastic. And
Of
then
course.
upon begging my parents, then we got a Super Nintendo at the house,
Mm.
and then my collection of video games started to grow. I didn't. One thing about gaming as a child, I found a very specific type of games that I like to play, and I didn't get off of that very much. Like, I beat the same games a bunch of times. Like, I had the Power Ranger game, the Power Ranger movie game, which I probably beat close to 20, 25 times. I had, Super Mario All Stars, where I would run through that those four games, I had Madden, I had things in that vein. Like unfortunately, I didn't get to play Zelda yet. That was more so later down the line with like N64, and I pretty much after N64 had every system going forward, both handheld and console, aside from Dreamcast and the Wii U. Those are the
Mm.
two systems that I didn't um, get to. I did almost fight a cable repairman because when I had a Sega, I don't know if you ever remember Sega Channel.
Yeah, that was the Sega equivalent of the online service back in the day. Yeah.
Right. So I was obsessed. Where, monthly you get games, weekly, it would save your data, that game would get taken away, and all of a sudden, 4 months later, come back. Shout out to Echo the Dolphin. Um,
God, that game.
but yeah, when so I don't still to this day don't know the logistics of it, whether it was like they just couldn't keep it going, it was too expensive, whatever. But when it ended, whether it was done through cable, I guess.
Yeah.
So the cable guy came to take it. Well, the guy picked the wrong time to choose my house because I was getting off of school and I walked into the basement and saw somebody downstairs with my Sega channel in their hand, and I was ready to throw hands.
I was
And
about
my,
to say.
yeah, and my mom's like, no, 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 Sega channel, it's not a thing. He's got to take it. It's like I was ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh.
Sega channel was actually my first ability to kind of differentiate some of the games that I played and like change some of the avenues. Because when I went to N64, it was pretty much Super Mario 64, Paper Mario, Ocarina of Time, Donkey Kong 64, and sprinkling Conker's Bad Fur Day. So it was more
Mm.
so adventure games. Like I didn't really those short like platformers. I didn't really get to those until like Sega introduced me to some of them, and then years after having that, going back to my N64 and kind of adding to it. Like I only played Majora's Mask like maybe 2 or 3 years ago with Mary.
Mm. Still got to pick that one up.
Yeah. All right. So that'll bring us to the second question. Was give the people, maybe you already talked about Metroid, but like 3 or 4 of your favorite games, franchises, however you want to throw it in there.
Sure. Well, so just off, let's see, what do we got? So my favorite game of all time, as well as being my favorite franchise, as I briefly went over earlier, Metroid Prime. It is. You can make the argument that the game, in some measure, has not aged well, but for the time, it was a very risky game that sort of kind of revived a franchise after like an 8-year hiatus. Metroid Prime came out on GameCube 2002, alongside Metroid Fusion. Both of those titles were very uh, departures from the typical sort of platformer shooter formula that they were typically known for back in the day. So Metroid Prime being a first-person game, which was effectively unheard of for that franchise, and particularly not a as polished genre as it is now, rather. But it's a game that I'll always go back to, like every year or so, especially now that the remastered came out fairly recently. But it's a game that always like it's my go-to for like a happy place. It's a game that has a wonderful, optionally interactive story, a soundtrack that I listen to. It's my ringtone on my phone. It's a challenging game in some measure. It's not a overbearing game. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a perfect runtime. It's this just complete package for me. I'll always go back to it. My second favorite game of all time would be Resident Evil Remake on the GameCube. The the series that is usually credited as birthing the survival horror genre. It's a sort of puzzle game, but with like survival mechanics of managing resources and deciding which enemies to avoid, which to attack. So it's it's a plotting your route across a mansion and other biomes of the game that you'll go throughout. But it's incredibly atmospheric. It is aged so well to this day. It still looks amazing on the GameCube. It's something I would always recommend. My second favorite franchise of all time as well. And then third on my list would be Mega Man X, the one of the more notable games on the Super Nintendo. Very challenging platformer shooter with a great soundtrack and all. Sort of the also somewhat of a revival point for the series, where the original Mega Man games on the NES, they were kind of declining in sales. So Capcom thought, all right, we needed something. We need a new kick, something to kind of just put a new pep in the step. And then Mega Man X was the result of that. A game that made some interesting design choices in which you can choose which levels to tackle in whatever particular order, but that also meant that you have certain results as like different taking on those bosses in different orders affected stages otherwise. So like if you went to Chill Penguin stage, Flame Mammoth stage will be frosted over with all the magma cooled, things like that. There was a lot of interactability that went beyond just arbitrary choices. And then beyond that, Witcher 3, as I've talked to you at length over the years, one of my favorite RPGs of all time. A very lengthy game, but it is all killer, no filler. Every side quest is rewarding. It's a great experience overall. Wonderful music, beautiful graphical design. It's something I'll go back to eventually, but that game is quite the undertaking. Probably 100 hours or so for each playthrough. And then my fifth game I'll leave it on is Diablo 2. Me and my brother
Wow.
played that a lot. Yeah, me and my brother went through that plenty of times as a kid, and then fairly recently with the remaster that came out a couple years ago. But it's an incredibly atmospheric game. It's very punishing, especially if you play it on hardcore mode, bleh, which is effectively the equivalent of a Nuzlocke run in terms of like
Yeah.
one and done. Um, but there's a lot of camaraderie in that game with like humble beginnings and like learning spells, and you never feel like you're in total control, which is kind of nice in a sense that it's a game that has you back on your heels, and it has a good balance between lore and then gameplay without one not over encumbering the other. But it's something I'll always go back to. It'll just start up a new character and go at. But that's my top five. We'll leave it at that. But just to give you all an idea of my general interest in games.
That is very balanced. You have like some in the survival horror aspect, some in like the first person shooter puzzly game. So that's very balanced. As I was saying before, like growing up, my tastes were very narrow. So
Mm.
upon my favorite games is also narrow.
Mm.
Um, so for me, my favorite game of all time is a more recent game, which was Spider-Man 2018, Marvel Spider-Man 2018. Just that game is so much fun. I can, for me, if you could just go back to a game and just do one aspect of it for hours and hours and hours at a time, which is just
Swinging
swinging through
around.
the just swinging through the city. I mean that
Yep.
to me just adds so much time, love, replayability to it. And personally, I love a story that everybody knows, but then you put it into the hands of a different artist and then you let them tell their story, which may end the same. Like the end point is still the same, but it's the journey that's different. And I liked that. Everyone knows Spider-Man. He's one of the most popular IPs and one of the more favorite superheroes out there. Um, if you ask people, most likely he's in their top five.
Mm.
I just feel like everyone knows his origin story, and for this game to just understand that you knew it is the first in the franchise. There's obviously been Spider-Man games before it, but it was the first Marvel game for him, and for them to just take it and say, "We all know you know the origin story, so we're gonna start." Whatever it is, 5 or 6 years of him already being Spider-Man. So you don't have to go through the, oh, well, he's going to get bit now, and now he's going to go through this, and So it was really nice, and the story's great. Sinister Six is cool. Um, the combat is very Arkham, which it will be on my list later. Um, and I like the fight and counter style. I enjoy that. And you add some of the gadgets and stuff that Spider-Man has. So yeah, that game and just swinging through the city is just so much fun that it couldn't. I have such a love for it that I still have gone back. I've played it a bunch of times. Game number two is one of the ones on my hat, which is Kingdom Hearts, the first one. That is
Mm.
so I love gaming, as we talked about my brief history of gaming, but playing Kingdom Hearts on my PlayStation 2, renting it from Blockbuster, coming home, playing it, my cousin sitting on the couch behind me, and sitting there for hours replaying the opening theme song in Dearly Beloved, which Mary and I listen to it probably once a week at least. Just one of the best so, music in games, I would say.
Mm.
Yeah, but just I love Disney and playing a game where you had Disney characters in it and replaying the stories and movies that you've watched, and again, watching somebody else take an IP that you know and love and putting their own spin on it and now connecting all these worlds. I mean, that the more in the franchise you get, kind of the more convoluted it gets, and the story's a little hard to follow. I
Mm.
totally understand that. Um, but it is my number two. My number three is Donkey Kong 64. It is a game I put a ton of hours into. I liked having one of my favorite things in games is also having an overworld that kind of gets you get new abilities or something happens and it just opens up what you already knew of the world. So like all of a sudden you do something and the gate raises and then you go in that area and now it's this whole big thing. I like when different characters have different abilities. So you need this character to do this thing,
Mm.
this character to do this thing. I love uh, playing a game and having a bunch of checklist stuff to do and just checking things off the list and okay, what do I have to do? I have to get 100 coins for this character. Okay, let me go here. Okay, this character needs. I need this character to go in this cave. So having that type of like different character abilities needed to do different things and combining those to access different areas, I really enjoy. So Donkey Kong 64, um, Kingdom Hearts 2 is probably next on that list. Just again another entry into the series where it continues to dive the story a little further with the characters that you know and love, and kind of fixing things from the first one, like some of the battles, some of the combat, different aspects like that, uh,
Mm.
the traversal in the worlds, having to revisit worlds to do different chapters. So I think they did a lot of good things with Kingdom Hearts 2 to um, kind of fix what they learned from Kingdom Hearts 1, but Kingdom Hearts 1 just still has a special place in my heart. And I will throw a shout out to a game from my favorite series, which is Arkham Knight, the Batman Arkham series. Again, I love an IP being taken and, kind of throwing different things to it. No spoilers, but I love what they. Batman's main villain is the Joker, and in each of the three games, he plays a part in the story and is a villain no matter what. And the psychological aspect of the Joker, where his his journey evolves as well with the Batman, where the first one is just brute violence
Mm.
and what he wants to do, and then the second one is a little bit of a mix, and then the third one's just a psychological aspect of the choices that he's made and how he always said that Batman needed him to, you know, to be worth something, to mean something to the city. But it
Mm.
turns out that the Joker needed Batman as a challenge and a rival and something to fight against. So those are my top five. The Arkham series is my favorite series of all time. I just finding all the different Riddler trophies and riddles and seeing all these different comic book characters come to life
Sure.
is just, again, I love an IP and giving it in the hands of another artist and you getting to play through the story in their eyes. I really enjoy that.
Hell yeah.
All right. So, the next question I have for you is, being that this podcast is going to be diving into mostly retro games, but occasionally when a new game comes out that we both really want to visit, still trying to talk Dan into playing Pragmata when that comes out next month, or actually later this month. What is a game that you haven't played that you hope the podcast gives you the avenue to play it?
Ooh. Oh. That is sort of that's almost too of an open question, because it's like that question kind of bleeds into just this backlog of games. But are you asking like a game that I otherwise maybe not be interested in, or at least haven't picked up on, that maybe if we talk about it will get me into it?
Yeah.
Because, okay. Uh Let me think. So, it's tough because I already have this laundry list of games that I want to go through, but something that at least is not, that isn't necessarily piqued my interest, but I'm just at least vaguely aware of. Admittedly, not just because you said it, but Pragmata is a game that uh, I'm it. I haven't willingly looked into it that much, other than maybe a few minutes of trailer, and I've made it a very strong habit of mine to do more often with games, so I don't like numb this sort of excitement down to the release window of a game. But it I that almost plays against me in that there's so little I know about it at this point that I don't have the spark. But then the other side of the coin is it's being published by Capcom and probably developed by Capcom R&D. They have
Capcom don't miss right now.
Yeah, they have not been missing for the last 9 years almost now, since like Resident Evil 7, things like that. They, but having that in the back of my head will probably put it somewhere on my list. I would say it.
All right.
I do.
I can live with that.
Yeah, like the brief mechanics where you have your main character and then your sort of little girl android friend or whatever her story is, to like be your sort of hacker buddy, to like be that kind of twist on the gameplay mechanic where you have to just solve brief puzzles and then that's interwoven into the combat. So that's an interesting take. And then I love sci-fi in general. From what I understand, Capcom has always had a good has dipped their toes into that before.
Yeah, good feel for it, for sure.
Yeah, that's something that, as the days go by, I might lean toward more, because I'm also very nowadays, unfortunately, very apprehensive about buying AAA titles, especially on or near release, or at least letting like patches get ironed out, or trying to like collect more secondhand opinions on it, things like that.
Yeah, I feel that.
What about you?
For me, it's Chrono Trigger. Critically acclaimed game that I just never got around to. I love turn-based RPGs. As we're talking about Pokemon here on the podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe that kind of burned me out because of how much Pokemon I played, and Pokemon, was every 2 years, and I would sink so much time into it. And what system is Chrono Trigger on? Super Nintendo?
Super Nintendo. And
Okay.
it was ported to the DS officially like a decade later.
Okay, so as far as the Super Nintendo goes, I talked earlier about just having a very narrow range of games that I had with that system.
Sure.
But it is definitely, like I said, critically acclaimed game. You played it, sunk so many hours into it, loved it, said you could beat it in a relatively short window of 20 to 25 hours, and then there's just so much stuff to behind the scenes post game that you could do, and I enjoy that because I normally get lost in the sauce of the game and have to, one thing you guys will know, as we will joke about, I'm sure, very frequently on the show, is I have a hard time finishing video games because I get distracted by the new shiny thing. I stream on Twitch, and a lot of times I feel the pressure of playing the new thing. Um, I also, Dan and I work at the same location. Um, I, work almost 60 hours a week, so sometimes video games take the back seat, or I can't put as much time into them as I would like. I'm also married, luckily with a wife who enjoys video games as well, so that helps push me to play games. But a lot of times, as opposed to my interest when I was younger, I have a much more flavorful palette these days where like I like doing a bunch of things, which is what led me to create this podcast and kind of dip my toe in a bunch of different waters, since I like fantasy football and baseball and sports and reading and all these different things. So it pulls me in different avenues that I never got to play a game like Chrono Trigger. So I think that's where I want to eventually get to playing. That's one of the games I would like to focus on down the road um, in the podcast, because I haven't played it, and I think that this is a good avenue in which to play it.
But before we move on, just as a general rule of thumb of advice, maybe I have said this to you in the past, but when it comes to whether it's forcing yourself or waiting for the spark of interest to happen for a game that's like you're either on the fence about or just want to be willing to put the time into. My recommendation to people, I tell this to any gamer friends I have, it's that don't do your best not to play the game of the same genres back to back, especially because you'll wind up unconsciously making comparisons about them to see think like the strengths that you had in the previous game that you played, and then kind of sort of trying to layer that onto the new game you're playing, and then you might be more critical than you otherwise would be.
Mm-hmm.
But then
Yeah.
the other consideration is that playing games of the same genre, as to what you said a few minutes ago, is a sort of exhaustion that happens because of the same sort of approach and mentality you'll have towards it, whether it's like grinding, leveling up, or doing side quests, things of that nature. But
Yeah.
it's because Chrono Trigger is a game that's very relatively focused to begin with. You'll have to do little to effectively no grinding, assuming you just do the main story beats and the side content as it appears. Um, and it's mostly medieval focus. You travel through time and things like that. So you have to have that sort of flavorful mentality about it. If like something else in your life occurs, then you're on that kick of whether it's time travel or something else that's relevant to it. So keep that in the back of your head.
Yeah, it's definitely on my list. It's been on my list for some time, so I
Mm,
definitely would, you know, like the podcast to cover it Sunday.
sure.
Because we want you guys, the listeners, to also be a part of it. We think of this podcast as like a video game book club. Is kind of the way that I pitched the idea to Dan, where we record or we set up the first Friday of every month. That's the goal. We'll just say it as it stands right now. First Friday of every month, we get together. We talk about the games. You guys can email us questions. You guys can write it on our socials, questions that you guys have, which I'll bring up at the end. This way, everyone has that month to play, gather data. Maybe it's one of your favorite games. Maybe you've never played it. Like maybe Dan's played a game, but I haven't, and that's the game of the month. And then we come back and he gives his points of view about it, and I give mine. So that's just what this whole podcast originated from, the idea of coming together. You guys suggest a game, and then we run with it. Um, Funny enough, the second game that I had brought up to Dan about doing, but we didn't want to be too Pokemon focused, was Gale of Darkness is the one that came to the Switch, right?
Mm,
Online. Yeah, so that's what
I
I
believe
pitched
so.
because I was excited to play that. But I can understand having back-to-back Pokemon discussions. So stay tuned to the end of the video to where we talk about our next game that we will be playing. But all right, so making the segue, diving back into Pokemon. Actually, before that, I have one more question, Dan. I didn't bring this up to you
Sure.
to prepare
What
for.
do you got?
Um, is there something in gaming that you wish you could change, whether it's the idea of something or You wish one thing didn't exist, or you wish people would stop uh, perceiving something as one way. I could give you mine if you want a couple minutes to think, because I didn't give you time to prepare for it. So,
Yeah, give me your take first, just so I know what you're aiming at.
I want more. As much as I do love an open world experience, um, I would love more 12 to 18-hour games, maybe even a little less, maybe like 10 to 14-hour story games, and then maybe add some post game content or give a little bit of replayability, maybe different endings, whatever, what have you. Just because, with saying how much time is taken away every day, like I work, 50 to 60 hours most of the time and have different interests in the family and whatever. A lot of the times I don't get to finish games because they're 30, 40, 50, 60-hour experiences. And then if you want to 100% it, which is funny because I'm a completionist who doesn't complete things, um, because of I'm putting so much time into something, and then I get distracted by the new shiny thing because I feel like that's what I have to be playing.
That's the Twitch curse.
Yeah. So for me, I would love a little bit more of the. And I get AAA titles. You want to feel like you got your money's worth, so they feel like they have to give you a 30-hour story.
Right.
But I just feel like you've seen TV shows and media get shorter with, TV shows when we were growing up were 24 episodes in a season. Now it's 6.
Sure.
Like, I just feel like they're, like you said before, more killer, no filler. I feel like a lot of games these days is a lot of filler just so you get the feel of the game. You get the experience where you feel like you have exhausted every avenue of that game before the story's done, and it's let me do that. You give me. I don't need to be. Well, what are those quests like? When you're bringing someone somewhere and you're just
Escort
following
missions.
them. Yeah, escort missions. When you're just following them from point A to point B, and it's one of two things: either A, you don't get to follow them at all, and you're just hands off the controller and you're just listening to dialogue as you walk, or it's worse, and you get to run, and you're running so far that the character's just still talking as if you're right behind them, and you're running up to the next area, waiting or doing something. So
Yeah.
I would just love to see a little bit more tailored, smaller, more compact stories, that you could then, even if there's an open world aspect, to then now I can go off and do all these things. Because also in these open world games, I do the side quests. I go off. I find the shiny thing. I go all the way as far as I can go to get the shiny thing up. Another question mark popped up. Up. Another exclamation point popped up. Up. This thing popped up. And before I know it, I'm level 25 doing story quests that are level 7. Like,
So to truncate what you're saying is it's broadly you want to see more games with just with a tighter, more focused experience. And
yeah,
I get that as well because as you heard me sing my praises about Witcher 3 all so often it's sort of this that game is a rare occurrence where there's a lot to do, but there's a lot of meat in everything that happens. But yes, there is between like the modern gaming culture slash business model that it is, where the unfortunate reality is that there's so many games from a business standpoint that just become the sort of mile wide, inch deep kind of thing, where they give the illusion of there's a lot, but not once you look at it under a microscope sort of thing. So
okay.
you wind up burning out pretty early on in some of these games, and then to what you said, the sort of fear of missing out mentality of playing something that's even more relevant, so that you can at least have more chances to probably talk about it with other people that are talking about the trending topic. So there's two major things pulling you in different directions in that regard. So I get that.
So did you have one? Did you think of one yet, or was I
No,
distracting enough?
no. So just it was to be honest, what I was thinking of as you were going off about that was was really just how modern game development is, at least when it comes to things like AAA titles. The blessing and curse being like more particularly PC games where or games that have online connectivity where they can be patched. So this sort of uh, has eroded a sort of discipline in the development cycle where games can be released half baked, but as long as they either draw you in or get their metrics of like uh, 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 pre-orders.
Purchases or downloads or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then it's like the problem with that obviously being is a game that's released in such a rough state. It leaves the most important aspect on the table like to get knifed down, and that's like the first impression of of any launch game, like No Man's Sky and Cyberpunk 2077 are I think the two biggest examples
Right.
of that lately,
Hmm.
where it just it feels like either a blank slate with nothing to do, or there's so many bugs that it just feels like this sort of uh, unrelentingly bad experience that you just have to put it down and like wait for months on end for it to be
Yeah.
like smoothed over.
Yeah, I'll come back in a year when they patch everything. Like, I get it. Yeah,
That's
100%.
that's sort of why a lot of times I'll just retreat into the retro scene because they're one and done experiences where the developers had to get it right the first time, and it's
Right.
just like
Yeah.
everything's locked on this one cartridge.
Which is so crazy with how long development processes are for these long, drawn out
Nowadays, yeah, yeah,
things, 5, 6 years in development. And
yeah.
again, because they're trying to put out 60, 70 hour titles, well, maybe if you can condense it a little bit, you don't have to release things for $70 or $80 these days. You condense them, maybe put a year and a half, 2 years in development. You feel like it's a very clean game. Gamers can get 10 to 15 hours out of it. You charge $40, and maybe you're on to the next project, and you sell 5 million copies of the $40 title when you were, if you went longer in development process or whatever,
Yeah.
and tried to make this 60-hour drawn out thing, you only sold it 1.5 million or whatever the case may be.
But the other aspect of that to sort of consider is games where their stories and depictions and worlds that they're set in have to be reflective of the amount of time that you want to devote to it. So games that are like open world, or at least they're entrenched in a certain reality that gives you the impression that you can go to so many places at once. It's like if it is merited, you want to spend as much time as possible in those worlds. So it's like
Yeah.
how do you like that's also the issue with the complexity of games as the years go by with each generation of console, and as the hardware allows us to like explore the visions that we would in the best capacity that we can. So it's so much more of a daunting task between the complexity and the long development times of games to like actually have a open
Tough
world game, for
balance.
example, be what it's fleshed out to be and what it can be to its fullest potential. So it's such a rough thing to tackle. So it's like I'm I have to remind myself because of those realities not to be as
Critical.
critical of some games that at least either fall short of the mark or just at least in my personal taste fall short of the mark. Yeah. So there's that.
All right. So back to your regularly scheduled programming. So back to Pokemon.
Go off, King.
All red, blue, yellow, fire red, leaf green. Music is phenomenal. I mean, still soundtrack you talk about these days. The battle music, people can identify certain songs from different towns that you go through. There's music for caves and battle music, and uh, I, the music in this game is just phenomenal.
But which one stands out to you the most? Because like so red, blue and yellow are effectively the same, but do you prefer the original soundtrack or the fire red, leaf green iterations?
The originals.
Gotcha.
The
Me
little
too.
that like little bit of 8-bit sound,
Yeah,
whatever.
that crisp 8-bit
Yeah.
chip tune sort of
Yeah.
soundtrack we go for. That'll always like there is. I think for you and me, since we're the same age, we have more of that nostalgia
Nostalgia.
bias for that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
The
that record to CD thing, like the record
Yeah,
just sounds better.
yeah, right. No, but like I do appreciate I do love the rearranged soundtracks that the Fire and Leaf Green did at least because they're built on stronger hardware that have like you can have more sound channels active at once, so you hear things like more percussion instruments and things like
Yeah.
to get the tempo going. So for what it is, it's still wonderful. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Any points that you want to bring up?
About those games, so to what we said originally, like Red and Blue in particular, like those two are rough to go back to.
Yes, extremely.
Yellow made some improvements, like especially to the sprite work. If you were to actually look at the originals
Yes.
versus Yellow, it's
Uh
like
huh.
you look at like Ekans for example in the original. He's like, "Rah," and you're like, what is that thing? But yeah, the Yellow was the sort of the more visually, conceptually fleshed out version where all because Red and Blue all they had was the sprite work. Because keep in mind, originally when Red and Green, as they were in
Yeah,
Japan, were
right, in
released,
Japan.
they came out before the show
Correct.
because the games were the only plan to exist because they didn't anticipate how well they would do, and then Game Freak was like, let's make a show,
Yeah.
and so they had a better building block on what they wanted them to look like from then on. So yellow is yellow aged a lot better because of that. And then it's like properly Ash versus Gary. Then you have actual Jesse and James that you encounter at various
Right,
points.
yeah. You can get the three starters,
Yeah.
which, is awesome. And for those who saw the show and then went to,
Yep.
it felt like you were going through the anime.
And
Pikachu was your
Pikachu right behind
partner.
you. Yep.
Yeah, you could talk to Pikachu. It tells you if it's happy, sad,
Yep.
medium, so you couldn't evolve him, which was funny.
Yeah.
Um,
Canonical, I suppose.
yeah. So yellow definitely is the way. I don't think I could go back and play red or blue. I don't. I don't think I could do it. As much as I love those games and have a spot in my heart for it, I don't think I could do it.
I've thought of that as well because I have the cartridges sitting in my dresser behind me. But at some point I will just so I can because to be fair because I had Red as a kid. I actually never beat it. I got so far along and then something lost interest and then I think at some point my mom got me Silver for Christmas and then I just
Okay.
went to that for a while. And then like as kids it's hard for us to focus on one thing for too long. It
Yep.
was sort of that sort of shenanigan that happened. But for the sake of my my self-imposed campaign of just finishing something that I didn't as a kid, I suppose, because there's been a lot of that I've done over the last few years between like games like Ocarina of Time and Chrono Trigger and all these other things that I tried back in the day but never finished. So I will eventually, and then I guess what I have to sort of be aware of is how they haven't aged as well and they're more of a slog. But
Yep.
I'll still try and soak in that nostalgia when I can.
Yep. Fire red and leaf green, like we said before, did do a good job of like
Yeah.
ironing out some of the things and
They respected the original source material as much as they could, but and then including a lot of endgame content, which I appreciate.
yes,
Yeah, between like the
especially
five
for
islands and all that spiel.
yeah, especially for Nintendo Switch with
Yeah.
getting all that extra content post game was awesome.
Introducing Gen 2 and Gen 3 Pokemon.
Yep. And then
Love it.
yeah, so the attention to detail and kind of fixing some of the problems like the experience meter, the um, switching Pokemon out really quickly, the running shoes.
Yeah, the running shoes, being able to rebattle trainers,
Yep.
things like that.
So it definitely helped. For me, one of the things that annoyed me the most was the lack of diversity in trainer battles.
In what regard exactly?
So, I say this, but I also haven't played a mainline Pokemon game in a very long time. Scarlet Violet was
Same.
the last one I played, and that one's a little different because you can kind of go everywhere, but you can't at the same time, and you can go in whatever order. Um, and I understand that Fire Red, Leaf Green, before you, and of course Red, Blue, and Yellow, before you even account for the post game stuff.
Hmm.
You have 150 Pokemon.
Hmm.
plus and then you take out the version exclusives, which I never really understood why for the version exclusives why you still couldn't give the trainers that. I understand that you wanted red and blue to work together to complete the whole Pokedex. But why couldn't you still give trainers? Why couldn't a trainer that I was facing have a Growlithe? Just to put him in my Pokedex because I was playing blue. But only red had Growlithe. So I feel like the trainers shouldn't have been narrowed for version exclusivity and the players could have. Like, you should have been able to still experience a Growlithe. He still obviously exists because I can trade for him. So I feel like the experience shouldn't have changed in the regard of the trainers you are facing. But it's just very annoying when you go and you face a trainer and you see they have 4 Pokemon and you're like, sick. This is
Four
gonna be
Geodudes.
right. There's a
Okay, I see what
trainer
you mean.
in like route whatever at the end of the game. It's
Yeah.
got 3 Pidgeys and a Spearow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, and they're level 20, 22, 21, and then the Spearow's like 20. And it's like,
Sure.
really? Like, I,
Yeah. That's
I
also kind of the
totally,
curse of Gen 1, by the way.
right. And I totally understand gym leaders having that. This is the poison leader gym. So, the later on in the Pokemon journey that it gets with the games and stuff, there's more Pokemon to choose from, and then there's, all right, well, there's a fire flying type, there's a fire grass type, there's a fire rock type, there's a fire this type. So understand that eventually it gets a little bit more understood, but
Mm.
listen, I totally get if you're going just on a random route, not like one that's on water or whatever, and you face fishermen, whoever, and they have a Magikarp, a Goldeen, and
Yeah.
a Tentacool. Okay, I get it. But I shouldn't continue on that route and there be 7 fishermen who all
With the
have
same
the
stuff.
same. Yeah, like there's got to be variations of trainers who are more diversified, who have maybe an electric type, maybe a fire type, maybe they have 2 rock type. One's a rock ground, the other's a rock whoever.
Sure.
Just you just need to see a little bit more diversification, and I totally understand that it's red, blue, yellow, and fire, red, leaf, green. It's the first entry in the series. You don't want to change too much, But it's crazy how it's like, all right, well, this route, I guess I'm training this Pokemon because
You know
it's
exactly
all
what type
flying.
they all have.
Yeah, it's all flying type. So now my rock Pokemon is just going to go off. My electric Pokemon is just going to go off. Like I'm not going to use the other 5 Pokemon in my party. So what is the point of me creating a balanced team to then just not use that and just like we could just talk about it. The game is relatively easy. You
Yeah.
you can skirt through the game with just your starter, or pick your favorite Pokemon and let them run wild. You can outlevel the gym leaders and the Elite Four and all that. The Elite Four is a little harder, but um,
I will say the pushback against that is one thing I appreciate that the game does at least is it limits you somewhat in terms of over leveling because like when you need a certain amount of badges for the Pokemon to respect you up
right,
to a certain
yes,
level, stuff like that. So that's an important thing. But while I have it in my head, one gripe I've had, I remember it more. I don't know if like the original Red Blue Yellow did it, but in Fire Red Leaf Green, one thing I didn't like is that every trainer you face, the Pokemon are all the exact same level.
yes,
So that's one thing that just felt a bit more like a very copy and paste sort of thing. Like I wish there was like some variation
hmm
to at least make it feel more like their trainer at least is having their own varied experience before they fight you. Because I know Gold and Silver did that, which I appreciated. You have one Pokemon that was like 7, one that was 12, things like that to kind of
yeah,
like throw you off your game.
hmm
So
I
that was
agree.
kind of
Yeah,
nice.
it kind of like you said, it showed that they went through a Pokemon journey. It
Yeah,
added a little bit of lore to the
a bit more
background.
flavor.
Yeah, flavor. That was a
Yeah,
good term. Yeah, that that's just what really kind of soured the game for me a little bit. I love the
sure.
experience. Like I honestly forgot how much there is to do
Yeah,
in the game because when I played the games when I was younger, I played it very strict and with a guidebook.
Oh, did you really?
I could not imagine playing these games today without a guidebook because they literally do not hold your hand.
Did I ever tell
They
you? Hang on, before I forget, did I ever tell you? You remember famously? Do you remember Rock Tunnel, where you
yes,
ideally should use Flash?
yes,
When I was a kid, I managed to get through it just by bumping my way through
hugging
the
the
dark.
wall.
Yeah, I was like, boo, 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 and then like hours later, I'm like, oh, finally, I'm halfway through my AA batteries and I made it. Shit like that. So I thought that was a great little
That's awesome.
tidbit.
Yeah, that's funny.
But yeah,
Yeah, no,
that's
that
about it.
I don't know because just certain experiences like you go to the ghost tower in Lavender Town and he just goes, "Oh, could see this." You talk to one person, it's like, "Oh man, you can't see the ghost here," but I heard there's a rumor that you can with, you know, if you have the Silphco or whatever that's
Ilf
called,
scope.
scope, yeah. So it's like, okay, and then you're just trying to like do stuff in that town, and it's like, no, you can't do nothing here, Doc. Try to keep on
Sure.
keeping on. All right,
Backtracking,
so yeah, and you just okay, talk to someone else, talk to someone else,
Yep, yep.
and then what really annoyed me was, you know, finding out like I remembered a lot playing through the game. I'm like, okay, this is this part. Okay, we're coming up to this part. We're coming up to
Mm.
this part. But the part where I forgot was where you get each of the HMs. So for those of you who haven't played Pokemon and want to, in this game specifically, you have what's called TMs, which are technical machines, which are moves you can teach to your Pokemon once in this variation of the games. They range from really good moves to really not so good moves to
Mm.
HMs, which are moves you could teach to your Pokemon as many times. It's moves you need to get through the game. They're called hidden machines. So they're cut, fly, surf, flash, strength,
Rock smash.
and rock smash. Yep. So these are moves you need to get through the game. Maybe not so flash as Dan just said. He hugged a wall and got through it,
Yeah,
but
miracle. Yeah.
you don't need fly to get through the game. Fly is just a tool used to go back to certain areas you visited previously. You go to the Pokemon Center. Um, it's a quicker way to navigate around the world because you do have to do backtracking.
More of a quality of life HM then,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. And you can miss those very easy in the game, and there's no holding your hands to say, "Oh man, in order to continue, you need to go here and here and here and do this." There's no, "What do I do?" You know,
Mm.
you may talk to someone and they may be like, "Hey, if you get to the end of the Safari Zone, that guy's giving out a prize." Okay.
Right.
Oh, I need strength to get through. There's no one that tells you, "Hey, you talk to the old man, and the old man's talking to you because he's got no teeth." So it's just, but you don't know that. It's just weird dialogue on the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, yeah.
Whatever he's saying.
And you're just like, okay. And then you talk to someone else, like, I hear that old man lost his teeth. And that's it.
Yep.
But then you go through the Safari Zone, you find a Pokeball on the ground, you pick it up, it's got gold teeth. And you're just supposed to put two and two together, like, oh, that's that dude.
It is sort of because games back then, during that era especially, it wasn't really. I didn't notice it until like the early 2000s that like games were a bit more. They gave you a lot more hints
Hmm.
for that, but like Red and Blue and to some extent Yellow are more of the you're left to your own device thing, which isn't inherently a bad thing. Sort of like letting the player uh, come to their own senses, because I don't know if they did this in Red and Blue, but I remember at the beginning of Fire Red Leaf Green, you have the tutorial, like, or you have the paragraph explaining to you. It's like you're going to be in a new world, but blah blah blah. Make sure to talk to everyone you meet, and you'll learn new things. And that's sort of the, I guess, teaching tool for kids playing the game to just socialize as much as they can, and they'll learn new things. So it plays to that sort of very important real life strength of you'll gain knowledge from other people in that regard. I don't know if Red and Blue did that though. That's the problem. So we
Yeah.
find out how to get
Yeah,
from A to B.
I don't think they did. I don't think they realized
Yeah.
the monster that they created until they
Yeah,
created
yeah.
it. So I think that is something that was thought about
Yeah.
and utilize their information to then go on and fix it going forward. But
Yeah.
in this iteration of the game, it is. I don't know how people played it without a walkthrough.
Yeah, I did.
Like,
Sort of.
and then, yeah, like, until I actually got to buy the guidebook, it
Mm.
was walk down to the local store, read the guidebook. Okay, steps one, do this. Steps two, go here. Steps three, go here. Steps four, go here. Okay, yep, go. Then realizing that the KB Toys around the corner from my house sold the one copy of the guidebook they had. Now annoying my mom to go to Toys R Us so that I can read that guidebook, and then she finally bought it for me. But then going forward, just that was just my thing. Okay,
Yeah.
this is the Pokemon. What moves do they learn? Go into the back of the book and the Pokedex. That is how I learned Pokemon. That's how I got excited about Pokemon. That's why I love the franchise, which is probably going back to our conversations to start the podcast with Batman Arkham being my favorite franchise and Kingdom Hearts being the second. Pokemon's probably the third. At least the mainline Pokemon's, because then
Sure.
you get with some of the spin-offs, which I love. But that's for another time. But
Um,
just the main line, like they could have done a better job with that in my estimation, just because you needed the guidebook to get through.
yeah, I understand that. To be fair, from the behind the scenes that I've read and listened to on Red and Blue in particular, there was keep in mind every line of dialogue, every chiptune sprite sound, everything is file data taking up room in the cartridge, and they actually were already at their limits. So somewhere in the mix, they might have made some cuts along the way, and then either didn't have room to iron out some bugs and other things. But to the point you're making, I guess dialogue was some compromise they either had to make or they didn't consider enough. Because keep in mind, Game Freak was still a very fledgling studio at the time with only a couple of like Super Nintendo games under their belt, so they were not. It was a rough start, but to another critique I'll have of the game, Red and Blue, and then it sort of echoed into Yellow and Fire Red Leaf Green was the music. Is that they're great for what they are. It's just the issue being that there's no variance in the three major like battle music tunes. You have the
Mm-hmm.
wild Pokemon, regular trainer Pokemon, and then Gym, and then I guess Gary at the end. But there's no variance in it either, depending on the biome or anything in between. If you play for example the two games that stand out, Paper Mario the Origami King and then Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door remake, you have that freshness where depending on where you are in the game the actual battle music changes, and it helps change that flavor so you don't get this stale sameness of the combat all the way through.
Yeah.
It's such a small thing you might not consciously acknowledge in the game, but it goes a long way to not make you like feel dull to the experience. And to be fair, as I was saying earlier, it was a file size limit that they probably had for Red and Blue
Yeah.
and those in particular. So I get it.
Yeah, that is something that I have to put thought into and respect the boundaries of the cartridges and the video games at the time.
They worked with what they had.
Right. Yeah. I understand that, but we put it under a microscope to examine it,
Yeah.
and that is something that I wish, for me,
Sure.
a critique that I had. But again, given what you said, I totally understand it. It also allowed them to make more money where they were double dipping with, here's this experience, and here's this thing over here that you don't need, but you kind of need.
Yeah. Yeah. That's Pokemon.
Yeah. So are we ready to give it a rating?
But which ones in particular? Which ones are you aiming
So
at?
we can break it up into red and blue by itself,
Sure, sure.
and then yellow by itself, and then fire red leaf green.
Sure.
So just for the people, so I like, and Dan and I talked about, I like to rate things out of 100 because I feel that you get more depiction and you get more separation from an 80 to an 8.0. Because if I feel like this game is an 84, but we're running on a 20-point scale, which is 8.0, 0.5s,
Yep.
whole numbers and then 0.5s. I feel like you, especially for us, where if we're going to be doing one a month, I want separation. For some of these other outlets that are doing, 100 rating 100 games a year. All right, yeah, it just puts more into a bubble. It's easier for you guys to just kind of this game's an 8. Yeah, so for me, I want things differentiated. I want to make a statement. I want things to matter when they're an 86 compared to an 85. I want it to matter.
I get that.
All right, so you want to start with your red and blue back in the day. What was it like? And then
So,
you could do one of two things. We're talking about it on the fly here, first podcast, people. You're watching it live.
hmm.
Do you want to give us what you think it was then compared to how you feel it is now, or do you just want to give it this is what the game is now?
I think what I would do is take the childhood nostalgia experience and kind of cram it with my modern day experience, because you're having you have that emotional attachment as a kid, but then you have the retrospect as an adult, and you have to see how you can bridge those two. That's how I'm going to approach it. I would give Red and Blue a 75
Okay, that's my rating
for the
exactly.
two.
Yeah.
Wow, because I feel like as we went over the last hour, they're important games. They're building blocks.
To one
They're
of
the
the
walk
biggest
before we
IPs ever.
run. They're
Yeah.
the walk before we run sort of experience to what would be the most successful media franchise of all time. So there's that. But missteps along the way, but at least established itself as one of the most strangely enticing yet addictive games children had their hands on back in the day. So for the subtle teachings that the game has in terms of respecting your companions and learning to socialize and not waver in the face of adversity, the game doesn't necessarily say those things explicitly, but for the teachings of the memorabilia and shows and everything around it, it's all ingrained in that experience. So it set the stage for what was to come.
Agree. Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. It is stepping stones to one of the biggest franchises in the world, and they hit it with different aspects and cards and media and yeah, the game itself. It has areas to where it can grow. It has the building of which the foundation of which the series then became. It can be a complex game where
Mm.
you can learn all these different moves and setups and get into the competitive scene, or you can just take it for face value and you know play with these creatures that you love.
It's a game for very different. It's a game for very different demographics of people, and it could be anywhere from casual to competitive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get what you want out of it. It's
Yep.
essentially it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where would you put yellow?
Yellow, I would give it an 80.
Yep, same for me. Right on the button. Yeah, me and you. This is why we did this.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it gave it a nice fresh coat of paint. It's like of those three, it is definitely the one I'm the most willing to come back to, and at least still retains that charm between the very crushed 8-bit soundbite of Pikachu going Pikachu and
Yeah.
everything in between. But yeah,
And the color.
it evokes, yes, and it's in color. But yeah, it evokes more of the familiarity of Pokemon that we know today. So it'll age better as time goes on.
Yeah, playing the show essentially.
Yeah.
Different. If you watch the show, you got a little bit added extra flavor and lore to it. Who Jesse and James are and why it's funny and why Pikachu's following you and so on and so forth.
Sure.
All right. So fire red, leaf green. Hit me with it.
I would give them an 84.
Okay, I'm slightly low. I'm at an 83.
Okay.
Don't think it's at that B plus value, just
Mm.
because of the things that we talked about. the lack of diversity for trainer battles is really it has really gotten under
Yeah.
my skin. And it even gets worse with the versus battle because now you're refacing those same trainers all the time, and it's just like, well, if I go to this one route where I get the most bang for my buck because I can go to this certain spot where there's 8 trainers in my vision, so I
Right, right.
get the most out of the versus seeker. It's like, all right, well,
Yeah.
this one trainer has 2 Geodudes. Okay, so that trainer is going to be for this Pokemon.
Yeah.
All right, this trainer has these 2 Pokemon. It's like, all right, well,
Yep.
it's
Yep.
the same 2 Pokemon as the trainer before you, and it's the same level. So it's just like it has definitely has the love and nostalgia of the first one with some added benefits like the color, the running shoes. The
Yep.
music is still it it's still very good. Made some changes, but the nostalgia of the first one holds a special place. They don't hold your hand both in a good way and a negative way. Yeah, and it's just it does great things, but there's still room to improve.
Yeah. I'm okay with my score because I feel like it helped. As I said with Yellow, it helps give the game new breath with the updated visuals and soundtrack, and the fact that I added so much endgame content and more Pokemon from the other generation. So you get a little bit more variation, but it's still they in some regards they followed the source material of the first games a little too closely, where they could have easily done more with the music. I'm assuming they had the room for that, but it doesn't do enough new to make them like groundbreaking experiences, especially if you play the originals. So
Hmm.
there's that.
And if people wanted to follow you, get to hear your voice more, get to learn some of your tastes, where can they find you?
You know what? Honestly, I'm not on social media as much, but uh, probably to get my opinions rather on games and whatnot, probably my backlogged profile would be the only reasonable way to have a good sense of my opinions. So that would be batlogged.com/u/butternutter with 3. But otherwise, you all are going to just know me from this podcast, and that's fine.
All right. Awesome. For me, I stream on Twitch at li_phenom. You can follow my Twitter, which is x.com, and when you type in the search bar, it'll be li_phenom ttv. And for the podcast side of things, if you go to Twitter right now, we're at Locked In Pods. That's LOCKEDINPODS. I'm working on the socials, trying to get the Instagram going, making sure I post that, our YouTube and stuff. But those are the areas in which you can find us right now. We will continue to grow, continue to work on those things. You can also write in and email us on game suggestions or the topic of the next game we're going to say, which is our next game is going to be The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, a lot to say about that game, so there will be, you know, I'm sure, very, very, very highly praised. But the email you could write into is, let me just pull it up to make sure that it is right, because I had to write a long one because people wanted to steal it. People got all these long ones. Everything that I wanted to put was taken. So this is email you guys could write in about the show. Just make sure you put in the subject line what show it's for, because I will be coming out with other podcasts and other channels. So this will be Locked In Podcast Network at gmail.com. So that's LOCKEDINPODCASTNETWORK at gmail.com. And that puts a wrap on the first episode. Dan, thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, and I look forward to this every month. So our goal is for the first Friday of every month, and Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild is our next game.
Wonderful.
So,
Looking forward to it.
yep, take it easy.
See you around, pal.
Peace out.